Hello, I'm Dr. Gretchen Lewis-Snyder, and I'm here with Dr. Paige Nelson. We're with Blossom Whole Family Therapy and Child Psychology Center. We're going to talk to you today about how to build your resilience in the face of stress. We originally, this is actually the second in a three-part series that we have done with our community partner, Mount Olivet Church in Plymouth. And we originally, this is the second of two of those presentations. And so when we did this originally in February of 2017, Dr. Carla Berkeley was also present, and she and I worked with adults in the group, and Paige worked with the youth. And this presentation is really specifically geared towards teenagers and preteens getting ready to be teenagers. And so we wanted to make this available in a podcast to make it more accessible. And so this is that. So let's just start talking, because when in the first in part one of this three-part series, we talked a lot about stress and what it is and how people experience it. And we threw a couple seeds out about what can be done, how people can, what they can do to manage stress. And in this presentation, we want to focus a lot more heavily on that side of things. So to do that, let's first think about how do people bounce back in the face of stress? Like, what does make them more resilient? And Paige, you see a lot of teenagers, and so you help them a lot with this. What are some of the key things that you found that when teens really have those things in their life, they are able to manage stress pretty well?
Well, there are a number of things that research and our own clinical practice has shown to be really helpful in helping teens as well as adults be more resilient. And one of those things is being more self-aware. So that's really noticing what the signs and symptoms of stress are, and also recognizing that those different things and the fact that you are stressed out is going to impact how you behave, how you react to different things, and how other people see you.
Well, that makes sense, because I can imagine too that as a teenager, you've had the experience of being in the presence of other stressed out teenagers.
Right.
And have likely experienced being stressed out yourself. So you kind of know, I would suspect that a lot of the kids listening get this and
Absolutely
know exactly what we're talking about here.
Right. School is extremely stressful, and there are a lot of different pressures that are going on. And one of the things that we will talk a little bit about is how other people's stress impacts your own. So stressed out parents are also going to make more stressed out kids.
Yes. That was a theme that we definitely were hearing.
Definitely.
Yeah, during session one. Yeah.
Another thing that we're going to talk a little bit more about in depth is enlisting your support team. So that is going to be something that you do, not only reaching out to people in your family, but also reaching out to other supportive adults in your life, such as teachers or guidance counselors or people at church, but also reaching out to your friends and knowing how and when to talk to those different people.
Yes, and that's so critical, because there are, I think in my experience, and this maybe is true for you also, kids tend to want to talk to other kids.
Right.
And although there are a fair number that also are pretty comfortable talking to their parents, but sometimes there's some challenges bringing things to parents or other significant adults. And so it's nice that we'll have a chance to kind of really talk about that, because the reality is that as a teenager, there just are times that you're going to need the adult support.
Right.
And so knowing how to overcome some of those challenges could be very helpful. So let's take care of biology. What is that?
That is really focusing on making sure that you're taking care of your body. So sleeping the right amount, eating, exercising, and making sure to take some time to just breathe and relax and notice that whatever's happening right now is not the very end of the world.
So basically, it's doing all the stuff we know we're supposed to do,
exactly,
but don't always do.
Right. All the stuff you learned in health class.
That's right.
That is what you're supposed to be doing.
Oh, crap. All right. What about the self-care toolkit?
That is very much geared individually towards people. So having different things that you can do to make sure that you are taking care of yourself and having some of those de-stress tools. So whether that's going for a walk or taking a relaxing bubble bath, I mean, everybody's going to have a different thing that will work for them. And it's just good to have more than one thing in your toolbox so that if something doesn't work, you have something to move on to.
So it's really figuring out specifically what's going to work best for you.
Absolutely.
Personally. Got it. Yep. Okay. Interesting. These last two are maybe a little surprising.
Right.
Helping others and do not have all the answers.
Exactly.
What?
So helping others, this is something that is very much based off of research as well. We have found that if you help other people and you're reaching out, you feel better about yourself. And it offers you an opportunity to kind of look at your own situation as compared to other people's situations, but then also be able to empathize with other people. So kind of take yourself out of your own situation and put yourself in someone else's shoes.
And my suspicion is that a lot of our listeners also do have had this experience, even if it hasn't necessarily been intentionally. They've been that person to offer a friend support and have been able to feel good about that. Or maybe there have been some volunteer opportunities that they've done and just have felt good. And so, again, I think people, as they think about it, it makes sense. It actually does make sense why that is so helpful. Right. And then resilient people do not have all the answers.
I think that this one especially ties to the first two that we talked about, being self-aware, knowing that I don't know what to do right now, and also enlisting the support team. If we had all the answers, we would never need to talk to anybody else.
That's true. And so therefore would be maybe isolated, disconnected.
Exactly.
Which is problematic.
Right.
Because we're wired to need to be connected. Oh.
And so if we recognize that we don't have all the answers and then can go to other people to try to find the answers and find the support from other people, then we're going to be able to move forward together and not just by ourselves.
That's really interesting. And I think, again, even if you're one of those people who's reluctant to reach out, if you have had people reach out to you, I suspect you did feel a connection. You felt a connection that felt good to you when that other person reached out to you, that there was something that happened in the relationship that felt good to both of you.
Right.
And so that's an interesting thing to think about, especially if it's almost like, so if you are one of those people that's reluctant to ask for help, it's thinking about, you understand that you are then denying your friends the opportunity to feel those good feelings you feel when they come to you.
Right.
So that's an interesting thought. So we had done a little survey when we did this originally with the youth at Mount Olivet, and they had written all sorts of interesting things about. We had asked them to write about, what's one thing you would wish the important adults in your life knew about stress, and they had some really interesting things to say about that.
Right. Yeah. A lot of the different things that they wrote down fell into three main topics. One of which is the symptoms, which is what we'll talk about now. One of which was the different ways that they want to deal with stress. And one was very specific advice for what they want their parents to do or not do with them.
Which just so you guys know, we actually have a separate adult presentation that we did, Carla and I did, with the adults, where we really did talk more specifically with adults about that and how to be good listeners. So that is also available on podcast. So if there's a significant adult in your life that you would like to get support. But so what did they say about how they feel when they're stressed?
So this really connected to our first presentation as well, where we really defined what stress is and how we can identify it in our everyday life. And so the teens said that when they are really stressed out, they feel tired, they're worn out, they have trouble concentrating and being really present in their everyday life because they're just so exhausted. On top of that, their muscles are fatigued and hurt, and they have headaches, and they just feel it all over in their bodies.
Yes. Yep. Definitely. And I hear that also from the teenagers that are in my office. You probably do
absolutely.
too. Yeah. And I suspect this is all familiar to the people listening as well. So what are the triggers? Like, what is stressing kids out?
Well, the big ones, and probably the most obvious are going to be homework and school and tests. And as teens are developing in this time, a lot of them are more focused on developing relationships with their friends and peers. And that can be stressful in and of themselves because there tends to be some drama involved in those types of friendships in high school.
There can be, yeah, and junior high.
And junior high, absolutely.
Yeah, possibly more so in junior high, or a different quality of it in junior high than in high school.
Different topics.
Different topics. Yep, different topics.
In addition, obviously, parent relationships, trying to become more individualized and learning the different rules of being a teenager or preteen, being late and disorganized, and what people think of them. They are more focused on, like, what am I doing and how are people looking at me?
So how common is how many teens are actually stressed out? Is this common? Is this uncommon?
It's extremely common.
It's so interesting because I don't know if you hear this from people that come into your office, from the kids that come into your office, but I hear it. They feel like they're the only ones. No one else is feeling this way.
Right.
And it's like, okay, I hear that 20 times per week.
Yeah, me too.
And so, and what we know actually is that stress is extremely common, and as actually probably, unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, I guess depending on how you are thinking about stress, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, but is more the norm than not.
Right.
It's actually the norm to feel this way. And I think that's an important message for anyone listening to hear, is that you are not alone. These things were reported by lots of kids just in a congregation, in a local congregation, like not anyone seeking out therapy. This was just typical kids. It was a sampling of typical kids in our local area. And so it's common, really, really, really common. I would like to be able to play this, but our technology doesn't allow me to actually record this and play this video. But it is really helpful. It's if you want to go on to YouTube, it's like a 2-minute video. It won't take a lot of time. But it's Why Stress is Good for You. It's Scientific American, Instant Egghead. So you can do a little search and pull that up. But it's great because it really talks about the physiology. It talks about how, what's really going on physiologically when you're under stress. And it talks about how when you take on reasonable challenges, what you're really doing is getting out of your emotional brain, getting up into that, that part of the brain that's right't your forehead, that prefrontal cortex, and strengthening it. That prefrontal cortex, that's where the primary thinking center is. It's where your problem solving happens. It's where your ability to kind of act and take action and think things through and to be logical and rational. And so when you are taking on these challenges, getting out of your emotional brain, getting into that problem-solving mode, getting into the healthy thinking, which I'm going to talk about, which we talked about during session 1 and talk a little bit about more again today. You are making that part of your brain stronger. And when you make that part of your brain stronger, the small stressors no longer seem so stressful and overwhelming. They seem like just a regular part of life. They aren't causing distress anymore.
Right.
And so that's something to think about. We kind of think about stress as being so bad, but actually it doesn't have to be. It can actually help you become even stronger.
And it helps us motivate to continue moving forward.
It does. Right. It absolutely is a good source of motivation. So here's how we're going to kind of think about this today, right? This whole self-awareness and self-care. I think we really think about these as two sides of the same coin. You can't have one without the other. You can't take care of yourself if you're not aware of what's actually going on with you, because you won't be doing the right things to help yourself. Or if you are doing the right things, it's by accident that you're kind of doing it that way, right? So within that, there's some big picture things like biology and relationships, some things that you can do just big picture overall to help yourself be resilient in the face of stress. But then there's those in the heat of the moment, like when you're actually in it, things that you can do to help yourself regulate emotions, and also the way you're interacting with others at that particular point in time. So we're going to kind of delve a little further into this. But let's just start with biology. You have an analogy that you use that I think is helpful.
So given how into technology teens are right now, it seems, and adults. Right. We're all kind of glued to our phones. And so I like to think of the body and the mind as like a cell phone. And these things that we care for our biology are like plugging in that cell phone. So as we go throughout the day, the battery, our bodies start to decrease. Our batteries start to get lower and lower. Stress is one of those apps that just kind of runs in the background and just sucks that battery life.
Mm-hmm.
And just like any other cell phone or any other battery that we use on a regular basis, we need to plug those in and charge those things in order to get them back to fully functioning. So these biology things are plugging in your body, plugging in your cell phone to recharge that.
That is interesting. Stress is like an app constantly running in the background.
Mm-hmm.
You guys have to relate to that, right? I mean, because it is. I mean, when you're really in stress, that really captures what that experience is like. Because even, I mean, people will say, the anxiety is always there. It's always there. Sometimes is less noticeable, and sometimes it's more noticeable, but it's there all the time. And so I think that's got to resonate with people. That analogy, yeah.
Right.
Okay, so eat, sleep, move, breathe. That sounds easy.
Right. And yet we barely ever do it the way that we're supposed to do it.
Yeah. So people have learned this though. People have learned this in health class. I know they do. So let's just kind of hit the highlights for people to kind of think about and really. So with respect to eating, what are some just helpful things for people to keep in mind about eating, healthy eating?
Start the day off with a good breakfast, because that is going to sustain you for the rest of the day.
That old wives' tale isn't such a wives' tale, but
no.
And actually, research is bearing this out.
Absolutely.
And because it's what happens is that your brain actually metabolizes. It can metabolize protein and it can metabolize sugar. The problem with sugar, though, is that it can give you that kind of instant energy really high, but then you crash right down afterwards.
Right.
Protein, by contrast, is kind of gradually releasing throughout your morning. So it's kind of giving you a nice, steady release of energy that your brain can use and your body can use, particularly when you're at school and needing to learn and needing to pay attention. And so you're giving your body that kind of charge.
Right.
We're a little more complex than a cell phone.
Yes.
One charge doesn't fit all. Like it has to be. There's different ways of charging. So I would agree with you. Breakfast. And really starting your day off with something good, and then maybe even snacking throughout the day and having something handy that you can munch on throughout the day.
Right.
Would be helpful. All right, sleep. I know they've heard of it a billion times.
Well, adults, 6 to 8 hours, ideally closer to the 8 hours. Everybody's going to fluctuate on the amount that they need.
No, that's actually not true. Did you know that?
Really?
Yeah, that's actually not true.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. When they do in sleep labs, which, I mean, everything's perfect in a sleep lab. That's not really real life.
Right.
But in a sleep lab, when they are able to really address people's sleep issues and any kind of sleep disorders that they have, and they get on a really regular schedule, they go to bed at the same time every night, get up at the same time every morning. I can just hear the groans right now. Oh my God, are you kidding me? I'm not kidding. But it's interesting because when they do that, when people do that, they actually fall into, without any variation, like without any differences at all, 8 hours and then some weird number of minutes, like 13. I want to say it's 13 minutes. There's no variation. That's what adults fall into. 8 hours and weird number of minutes, like 13.
Weird.
So where people vary is how well they tolerate sleep deprivation.
Oh.
Some people tolerate it better. Mm-hmm. Some people not so much. I tend to be on the not so much side. And I'm betting there's listeners out there who can recognize people who tolerate it better and people who tolerate it worse. And there are probably people that fit into those categories out there. So that's interesting to think about. That's for adults. Now, there is more variation in people who are still growing and maturing because of all of the needs that your body has in growing and maturing and all that development that's still happening. Right. So in that there is some greater variation, but it's not 6 to 8. It's
no,
more.
It is 8 to 11.
Yes.
So those teens and tweens need a longer battery charge than us adults do.
Because their bodies are having to work a lot harder than ours are as adults. And then that's just the reality. And even within that, you guys have maybe already, kind of discovered this for yourselves. If you're going through a growth spurt, you are sleeping way more. Like it takes a lot of energy to grow.
Right.
And so so that's just good to be aware. I know you've heard it before, but it's you just really give it some thought and really think about it. Moving. I know this is another one. Moving your body.
Yes, exercising. And I think that's something that everybody has on their to-do list.
Yeah.
Is to get up and get moving.
Right. But that darn motivation. Oh man, that's tough.
Especially once you're sitting there and you're watching TV. It is just impossible to get off that couch and go run.
It is. It is. We follow the laws of physics. So bodies in motion stay in motion. Bodies at rest stay at rest. So what I work with people on when I'm seeing kids in session is if you're already up and moving, like what are the times of the day that you're already up and moving? That's where you need to attach move into that part where you're already moving, because let's face it, if you settle in onto the sofa to watch a Netflix marathon, you are not getting up. Like that's just not even reality, right? Unless there's something that some extreme force acts on you to get you up and off the sofa, right?
Like when mom grabs you and pulls you off the couch.
Right. That's right. And so natural times in your day. So like getting home from school, for example, you're already in motion. So before you chill out, that would be a time that you could get a healthy snack. Go for a walk, go for a run, go for bike, I don't know, whatever the things are, do some yoga. You can decide and figure out what kind of exercise and movement is good for you. And you don't have to get locked into all or nothing thinking about it. Well, I don't have time for 20 minutes. I don't have 20 minutes to go for a walk, so I guess never mind, I won't move my body. Well, actually, if you only have 5 minutes, it's still more than 0 minutes. So, you could do the 5 minutes. You could do what you have. Work with what you've got.
So that's what you mean by all or nothing is some is better than none.
Right. Anything really is better than nothing. It's different, right? It's just start. Do something, right? Anywhere. Breathe. Well, that seems like a no-duh kind of a thing. Why is that on the list?
Well, being mindful of your breathing. So actually taking some deep thought out breaths. So you mentioned yoga, and a lot of times yoga is breathing and doing deep breathing, belly breathing.
Belly breathing.
Yes, the good old belly breathing. That is part of yoga.
Yeah.
And that's what helps you relax and let go of some of that stress in the muscles.
Because how do people breathe when they're stressed out? Do they have good breathing when they're stressed?
No.
Not at all, do they?
It is short and shallow and fast.
Yeah, that sounds to be what it is. That's exactly right. So when you breathe the opposite, when you breathe in a relaxed and slow, fully into your belly kind of a way, it changes your physiology almost instantaneously.
Right. So more oxygen to the brain can't be a bad thing.
No. It's funny. I've known kids that have taken, because in some schools yoga is offered as a gym class, and so I've known some, really athletic young men that have taken it like, haha, I'm taking yoga. Only they got into it and like, oh my God, this is awesome. I feel so good after. I mean, I love when stuff like that happens, right? You do it to be funny, and then it turns out it's actually helpful. So, okay. So in the heat of the moment now, being self-aware and then being able to take action to take care of yourself in the heat of the moment. So thinking about, in the heat of the moment when you're really stressed out, where is your attention focused? What is it that you're thinking? Where's your mind at? And then how do you, if it's focused someplace that's not very helpful, how do you get it out of that place? How do you get it out of that place and into a more healthy way of thinking? So let's just talk about that for a minute. If anybody saw segment 1, this probably looks familiar to you, right? It's really the foundation for self-awareness. This whole idea about in any given situation that we're in, the way that we think affects the way that we feel, and likewise the way that we feel affects the way that we think. So if you're feeling stressed out, then it's easy to interpret every little thing as being highly stressful, as a big deal, right? Which causes you then to feel more and more stress, which then makes everything seem like an even bigger deal. And you have this whole negative self-feeding cycle. And, your actions are playing a role in this too. What do you choose to do? Do you feel that stress and then just get busy and just start taking care of business? Or do you sit and fret? right? And spin in your mind around and around and around again, right? Mm-hmm. These things are interrelated to each other and they impact us. And, we have some control over our thinking and we have some control over what we do. And we can use those two things to influence our emotions and to help regulate our emotions. But I want to talk a little bit more about thoughts because thoughts are really important. And I love things like this, right? In the first one, I had a color one that I did, but in this one, what do you see? And I don't know, Paige, what is the first thing you see? You've probably seen this before.
I see a bunny first.
You see the bunny first?
Yes.
Yeah. Are you able to see the duck?
I am.
Yeah.
Yep. But I've also seen it a million times.
I've seen it a million. So you've had to kind of train your brain in order to see it both ways.
Right.
So there actually is both a duck and a bunny in this photo. And can you see both? Can you see both? They're both there. So if you're seeing the duck's bill are the same as the bunny's ears. The eye is the same for both, but the bunny's head is faced the opposite direction of the duck. So
the bunny's facing the right side,
right,
and the duck is facing the left
side, right. And right. So the bill/ears are the bill/ears.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And so I put things up here like this because our minds are easily tricked. Mm-hmm. They are easily deceived. It's easy to get locked into only being able to see things one way, when in fact, multiple things might be right at the same time. Multiple things that seem contradictory might be right at the same time. And it's easy to be tricked by that. And there's real life situations that happen all the time about that. And there's thinking actually that tricks us into feeling certain emotions that are really maybe disproportionate to the situation and what's going on. These are some of the common ones I see, and you see a lot of teens too.
Right.
Paige, what do you see a lot of in your?
The same thing.
Yeah.
All of these things are very, very common. All or nothing, I think, is a very popular one, as you kind of mentioned. It's like, if I don't do it 100% correctly, then I failed.
Right, then I failed. So that's all or nothing. It's perfectionism,
mm-hmm.
Right? It's catastrophizing,
right?
It's all of these things kind of rolled up in one. It's this way of thinking that is not helpful, and it's actually erroneous, right? That need to do things just so or forget about it. That sort of bleak pessimism about the future, or its close cousin catastrophizing, right? Where it's just like
everything is the end of the world.
End of the world. It's like a huge deal.
It's horrible.
Shoulding. I love this one, right? Don't should on yourself or anyone else. Oh, he should do that. She should do that. I should do that.
Right. I should exercise.
I really should do that. Yeah. Right. You're setting this expectation that may or may not be realistic, but then you're always falling short. It's a constant falling short, which feels like crap.
Right.
It's not helpful. It's not helpful, and it doesn't actually help propel you forward and help you do anything to manage your stress. Assuming is another big one, that kind of jumping to conclusions, making assumptions, mind reading, assuming we know what is in other people's heads.
Exactly. I see this a lot in conflicts between friends they're the frenemies.
She just thinks. He just thinks.
Yeah, they hate me.
Right.
My teacher gave me that feeling great because they hate me.
Right. Right. So those are all assumptions. Unless you can actually open up someone's brain, head, skull, look inside and see the thought, right? You can't do that. No one can do that. And so these are mind tricks. These are things that trick you into feeling a certain way and then acting on that. That's not helpful. So let's flip it, okay? Let's think about how can we think in a more healthy way. And again, I did go over this, and that's in that segment 1. So, but just as a refresher, it helps to think about, okay, what's actually factual here, and what am I guessing about, and what am I assuming, and to sort of like sometimes literally mapping it out. This is an action you can take, right? Map it out, sort through. How do I do that? Like, what is actually true, and what am I guessing about? Chances are, if you're stressed, you've got a whole long list of assumptions and a short list of facts that you maybe haven't even fleshed out.
Right.
May not even be a comprehensive list of the facts. And you start really looking at all of the facts without filtering them. Things start to look very different. Very different. And less stressful, by the way, much less stressful. Ooh, control. I love talking about control. How many people like to control things that they can't actually control?
Well, it's less stressful. If I could just control everything,
Right.
I wouldn't have any stress, right?
You wouldn't, because everyone would just be doing exactly what you want them to do, and there would be no adversity. But of course, that's not reality. And
Shucks.
so then it's really frustrating, actually, because you put all this energy into wanting to control and trying to control things that you can't control. But in fact, when you shift your focus onto what you can control, which would be what exactly do we have control over?
Your own actions.
Ah, right. My own actions. And probably, I suppose, the way I think in a situation.
Yes.
So I can come in. Sometimes, you record live and it is what it is. You gotta love the phone. It's all right.
I have an awesome ringtone though, right?
And we just roll with it. See, that's in our control. We can decide to roll with it, or we could choose to panic. We chose to roll with it, right?
And put my phone on silent. That's also within my control.
Right. So we definitely can do that, right? Shift our attention to things we can control. And sometimes this means thinking about what do we want to put out into the world, and is what I'm putting out there something I can stand behind and feel good about? Because if it is, then actually I don't need to worry so much about what other people think, because I've thought about it already before I put something out there. I've thought about how to say something in a respectful way. I've thought about the other person's feelings in making my decisions about that. I get to control that, and then I get to decide how I'm going to respond in a situation. How other people, if I'm acting in a way that I feel good about and that I can stand behind, then the way that other people respond is their issue, not mine.
Right.
And that can be pretty liberating.
Mm-hmm.
We want to talk a little bit about this last one, because we didn't talk about that so much in the first part of this series. And that is this a solvable problem? If it is, let's get to the finding solutions, because I think sometimes we have a solvable problem and all we do is sit and think about how horrible the problem is, and we never actually get to the bottom of solving it. But also sometimes situations are what they are, and we have to accept them.
Right.
And so let's just talk a little bit about that. So Paige, I don't know, in your experience, where do people get most hung up in problem solving?
Surprisingly, I think most people get hung up right on this first step here in identifying what the problem is.
Which seems, again, like a no-brainer. Well, duh, a problem is I'm not getting my homework done.
Right. But why?
But why am I not?
Right. There could be so many different problems within that one problem.
So true. Like
I forgot to bring my homework home.
Right.
I didn't write down the homework.
Right.
I left my homework at home even though I finished it.
Right.
But it's due right now.
Right. So there's a lot of points at which there could be a breakdown. And unless you understand, unless you really identified where the breakdown is happening or breakdowns, then the solutions aren't going to, again, unless you get lucky and happen to pick the solution, there's a good chance you're going to do things that aren't actually solving your problem and then don't quote unquote work you haven't actually solved what the problem is.
Right. Because you don't know what the problem is.
Because you haven't really figured out what the problem is. That's right. Right. And I agree with you. I see this all the time, and I especially see it in cases where the cause of stress is disorganization, poor time management, and that sort of thing. It's really, when we hit the pause button, take a step back, look at the big picture, and really start to break down, okay, what's happening, and step by step. Okay, so I'm sitting in class, right? I'm sitting in class, the teacher assigns the homework. What do I do? Well, I don't even hear it. Okay.
I'm talking to my friend.
Right. I'm talking to my friend and I hear. Or, I don't know. My mind is just elsewhere. I don't know. So, here, okay, that right there is a problem to solve. And there maybe are multiple solutions and maybe multiple components to a solution. So, maybe it's, okay, so is the teacher giving the instruction at the beginning of class or at the end of class? Right? And if you know that, then maybe that helps you kind of go, okay, I know I need to stop talking by such and such a time so that I can hear the assignment. Or the teacher's always writing it on the board. I just need to take a picture with my phone. And then I have a record when I get home of all that kind of stuff. Or my friend is always paying attention, right? I'll get the information from him or her.
Right. Or maybe I'm not even sitting in the right spot in the room, so I can't even hear the teacher assign the homework, or I can't read it from the board because I'm so far away.
Right. So you guys kind of get this, right? And I can't even tell you how many times this happens, where people have not hit the pause button, taken a step back, and really thought about, why is the problem a problem? What is going into it? What's contributing to that? Frankly, everything else falls into place. Once you do step one, we don't need to talk that much about the rest of this, because understanding the problem, everything else falls into place. It makes sense then what your solutions are going to be. I mean, oftentimes, I shouldn't say all of it. Oftentimes, though, the solutions do become much more apparent, the kinds of things that could be helpful.
I like your use of helpful.
Yes.
Rather than did it work?
Right. Because did it work is a tricky all or nothing.
It is. It is one of those mind tricks we talked about.
It is.
Because did it work? Yes or no?
Right.
If it didn't 100% work, then it failed, right? That's how that mind trick works, right?
Yeah, that's exactly how the mind trick works. In reality, what we know is that there's very few things that work 100%. Usually it's layering, right? It's doing this is helpful, so I'm going to do this. This is also helpful, so I'm going to do that. And it's like maybe a couple different things or several different things that you end up doing that make a big impact, but you need to do all of them together.
Exactly. So what about what I just did was helpful? And what can I take and move forward with?
Right. Because that helps you continue in that problem solving mode. And this is the sort of thing, when I was talking earlier about how stress actually can make you stronger, it's this process. This process, when you do this stuff and you practice it over and over again, just like any other thing that you practice, if you have an instrument that you practice and you get better and better, when you learn to ride a bike and you practice and you got better and better, you do a skateboard, right? You first got on it, it was a disaster, and then you kept at it and got better and better, right? Mm-hmm. This is how that works. Problem solving is no different. When you practice it, you get better and better, and the part of your brain that does it also gets stronger and stronger. Those connections get more and more powerful. And so some of this is having enough self-awareness to recognize when you're off track and into that healthy mind trick kind of thing, unhealthy and unhelpful mind trick thinking, and then bringing it back into the healthy. Every time you do that, every time you pick up your attention and put it back and deliberately put it on healthy thinking and problem solving, you are training your brain to do it more and more automatically. And your brain gets stronger and stronger. And instead of all those automatic negative thoughts that continually just pop up, like those booger men on the Mucinex commercials, where they move in with their rug and their furniture. That's how I kind of think of those automatic negative thoughts as mind tricks, right? They barge in.
And then just do what they want.
Right? This is your eviction plan for those unwanted negative thoughts. So yeah, okay. So let's just think about, how might one go about practicing this problem solving? You could do this if you guys wanted to kind of think about this. Right? Mary is friends with both Jake and Sally. Mary hears Jake say mean things about Sally behind her back. What's the problem?
And you're Mary in this situation.
Mm-hmm. What's the problem? There could be a lot of different problems here.
Yes.
And it could depend on the quality of your relationship with Jake, the quality of your relationship with Sally. It could be, how much do you care about what Jake thinks about you? How much do you care about what Sally thinks about you? What are your core values?
Right.
Is there anything about this scenario that's bothering you? If so, what? Why does it bother you?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a core value of yours that it's triggering for you? Right? And again, what do you have control over, and what actions do you feel like you can stand behind? Because that's what you have control over, right? And so as you're thinking about how do I want to respond in this situation, or do I? Because a non-response is also a response.
Mm-hmm.
Those are things that you are maybe going to want to think about, but you can see how understanding the problem and clarifying it with yourself is going to help you know which responses you're going to feel the best about, and that you're going to be able to stand behind in the best way.
Mm-hmm.
And so now let's say Sally finds out. And now Jake and Sally are in a fight. I mean, this happens all the time. I mean, not this exact one, but you know, you've got two mutual friends. Something goes down between them and now they're bickering and you're stuck in the middle.
Right.
It sucks.
Exactly. Because how do you know what to do?
Right.
Do you choose sides? Do you stay in the middle?
Right. Right.
What do you do?
What do you do? And so again, why is that feeling so uncomfortable to you? What is it about that situation that's causing you to feel so uncomfortable? What is it? What are the facts, right? Did someone do something wrong? Did somebody do something they need to own up to? Or was this just nobody really did anything wrong. It's just an unfortunate falling out, right? These are all important facts to consider. There is no automatic right, quote unquote, right way to respond in these situations because there's so much that can vary. But you can see how understanding the problem and really giving yourself some time to think and think through what the facts are and about what your core values are is worthwhile because it's going to help you know then what to do. All right. So let's just kind of take a moment to pause. Is there at this point anything that you guys as listeners want to improve on in the areas of your biology or your healthy thinking? And this can be helpful. You can hit the pause button. We're also going to attempt to break this up into smaller pieces. So it could be that you're listening to this already in a chunk, and in which case this is the last thing before this chunk is over. But taking time to identify what is there any one thing based on the things that we've talked about so far, any one of those things that you would like to do better? And think about it being a manageable, small chunk piece that you want to be able to do better. Reasonable.
So a baby step.
A baby step. Right. Something realistic. Not, for those of you getting 6 hours of sleep, I'm going to go to bed at 8:30 so that I have come on. We all know that's not going to happen at first.
Maybe like one night and then I'm like, okay, right. Going back to my regular routine.
So make it be realistic, okay? And then really think about why. Why would this be the thing that you're going to choose? What is it about this that you think is going to be so helpful? And then is there anything that's getting in your way? If so, what? List those things out. This is identifying the problems, right? This is what this is.
Mm-hmm.
What are the barriers getting in your way? What are they specifically? And then what ideas do you have about how to overcome them? How could you troubleshoot those and problem solve them? What would you need to do in order to set yourself up for success?